All right, let's talk about one of the most famous and maybe one of the most intimidating plays ever written, Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. It has this reputation for being confusing, but it's also incredibly human. So today we're going to dive right in and try to make sense of the strange, compelling world of Act 1. So I want you to just hold this question in your head as we go, because really, this is the engine driving the whole thing. What would that feel like? To put your life on hold, waiting for a promise that might just be, well, empty? Everything we're about to see, every strange conversation, it all comes back to this one powerful idea. And boom, that's how we start. It's one of the very first lines of the play, and it just perfectly sets the mood. There's this sense of exhaustion, of just giving up before you've even begun. And that feeling, it's going to hang over everything that happens. Okay, so let's get into our first part. The endless wait begins. We're not starting at the beginning of their wait, we're just dropped right into the middle of it on a day that feels exactly like yesterday and, probably just like tomorrow. So picture this. The stage is practically empty. There's a road that seems to go nowhere and a single bare tree. That's it. There's nothing here for comfort, nothing to look at. This emptiness is basically a character in itself, It perfectly mirrors the emptiness of their wait and how totally isolated they are. So who are these guys we're stuck waiting with? Well, meet Vladimir and Estragon, or Didi and Gogo. They're like a classic comedy duo, but sad. Vladimir is the thinker. He's always in his head, worrying, messing with his hat. And then there's Estragon. He's all about the physical. His feet hurt, his boots don't fit. You've got one guy suffering in his mind and the other suffering in his body. It's like they're two halves of one complete person, just trapped in this endless loop. So how do you kill time when time feels infinite? Well, they'll do pretty much anything to fight off the soul-crushing boredom. They have these conversations that go nowhere, they debate Bible stories, they even casually talk about hanging themselves from that single tree. It's dark. But every little argument, every silly thought, it's their way of fighting the silence. It's how they prove to themselves and each other that they still exist. And here's the kicker, right? This is the million-dollar question. They have no idea if it's the right day or even the right spot. They have zero proof that this Godot person is actually coming, and yet, they wait. That profound uncertainty is what it's all about. Something, some tiny glimmer of something, makes them keep this appointment, even if it feels like they're waiting for a ghost. So now for section 2. Just when the monotony is becoming absolutely unbearable, the quiet is just shattered. Someone is coming, but it's definitely not who they were expecting. You hear this loud cry out of nowhere, and suddenly this lonely, empty landscape is about to get very crowded and very, very weird. The wait has been officially interrupted. And here's who shows up. This bizarre pair crashes onto the stage. You've got Pazzo, this big booming guy with a whip, who's eating chicken. And then you have Lucky, his servant, tied to him by a rope, trembling, silent, and carrying all these heavy bags. I mean, it is such a stark, brutal image of power. And this whole scene is just deeply uncomfortable to watch. Pozzo treats Lucky less like a person and more like a work animal. And the reason Lucky never puts down the bags? Pozzo says it's because he wants to impress him, to try and convince Pozzo not to sell him. It's just awful. And it really highlights how desperate Didi and Gogo are too, when Estragon literally begs Pozzo for the leftover chicken bones. It's this cruel, surreal interruption that just completely shatters their quiet waiting game. Okay, on the part 3, the sound of chaos. So if you thought that was weird, well, buckle up, because this strange little visit is about to hit its absolute peak. Pazzo decides they all need some entertainment. And what comes next is one of the most famously chaotic scenes in all of theater. First, Pazzo makes Lucky do this sad little dance. Then, for the main event, he orders him to think. He shoves a hat on Lucky's head, and it's like a switch is flipped. The silent, trembling servant suddenly finds his voice. And what comes out is just an explosion. It's a total avalanche of words. Lucky just launches into this super fast stream of consciousness rant. It's filled with all this academic-sounding jargon, bits of philosophy, science. It all just tumbles out. For a second, it almost sounds intelligent. But then it starts to warp. The speech spirals into these broken, fragmented ideas about religion, about God, about a humanity that's just wasting away. You realize this isn't random gibberish. It's like the sound of a mind that's been crammed full of information, but has lost the ability to make any sense of it. And then, finally, it all just completely dissolves. The words get faster, more frantic, until it's not even speech anymore. It's just pure agitated noise. It's this terrifying outpouring of mental anguish, and it just horrifies everyone else on stage. It gets so intense, the only way they can stop him is to physically tackle him, to rip the hat off his head. And the second they do, he just collapses into silence. The chaos is gone. And just like that, Pozo and Lucky leave, and our two guys are alone again. And that brings us to our final section, a message, not a rescue. The sun is setting, and one last person shows up. It's not Godot, but it is a messenger who has news about Godot. So maybe, finally, they're going to get some answers. Or are they? A young boy shows up, and he's got the message. And it's the ultimate anticlimax. Mr. Godot isn't coming today, but he will surely be here tomorrow. See what that does? It's not an answer. It's a postponement. The wait isn't over. It's just been renewed for another day. And you can just feel Vladimir's desperation here. He starts firing questions at this poor kid, just grasping for any detail, anything solid. He wants to know what Godot looks like, if he's nice, anything to make this mysterious figure feel real. But the boy's answers are also vague. Godot is still a total mystery. So the moon is up. The day is officially a bust. And Estragon says the only logical thing you could possibly say at this point. Yes, let's go. It's over. Time to pack it in and try again tomorrow. But then you get the final stage direction of the act. And this is the gut punch. He says, let's go, but they don't move. Not an inch. They are completely frozen, rooted to that spot by the very hope that keeps them there. That single moment, that contradiction between what they say and what they do, that's the whole play in a nutshell. And that's where we're left at the end of Act 1, just staring at these two men who say they want to leave but can't. So it leaves you with the big question. Is what they're doing completely foolish? Is it just an absurd, meaningless cycle? Or is it actually an act of incredible, profound hope in a world that's given them absolutely no reason to have any? The play doesn't tell you the answer, and maybe that's the whole point. Okay, let's dive into one of the most famous and, let's be honest, baffling acts in all of theater. Act 2 of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Now, think of it like this. It's basically a mirror of the first act. But, it's one of those funhouse mirrors where everything comes back looking cracked, totally distorted, and just a whole lot darker. So you're looking at the scene, and it's the exact same spot as yesterday. But wait, something's different. That tree? Yesterday, totally bare. Today, it's got a few leaves on it, just a handful. And that's it. That's the only sign that any time has passed at all. Is that like a little shred of hope? Or is it maybe just a cruel joke? Because while the tree has changed, believe me, our guys are still stuck in the exact same loop. So you've got Vladimir, right? He's kind of the philosophical one, and he remembers everything from yesterday. The visitors, what they talked about, even the violence. But then there's his buddy, Estragon, who swears he's forgotten the whole thing. And this, right here, is the absolute core of the act. I mean, think about it. If you're the only one who remembers something, did it even happen? It just throws this massive shadow of doubt over, well, everything. So what do? I mean, how do you pass the time when time itself feels totally broken? Well, you make up stuff to do. You invent these little routines. They argue about boots. Again, they do this completely frantic, honestly kind of hilarious hat-swapping thing. They even start play acting as the people they met yesterday. But here's the thing. These are not just silly games. See, in a world that makes no sense, a world with no purpose, they're forced to create their own purpose. It's pure existentialism, right? If life doesn't give you a script, you gotta write your own lines, even if it's just to prove to yourself that you're still there. And then, just when you think the routine is set, they show up. The visitors, right on cue. But listen, this is where that familiar loop starts to seriously fall apart. What we're about to see isn't just a repeat of yesterday. No, it's more like an echo that's starting to shatter. And the change is, it's shocking. I mean, the sheer speed of how far they've fallen. You remember Pozo from Act 1, right? The big, loud, bossy guy? He's blind now. Totally blind. And Lucky, the guy who gave that absolutely wild, non-stop monologue, he can't speak. He's mute. Even the rope connecting them is shorter. Their whole relationship has become one of just total, desperate dependence. And this all happened in one day. And then bam, they just collapse. Both of them, in a heap on the ground, can't get up. And Vladimir, of course, sees this as some big, profound moment. He starts going on and on about the duty of all mankind to help each other out. It's a great speech, but that's all it is. Words. In reality, they just mess around, they argue, they get completely sidetracked, they even fall over themselves trying to help. It's a total mess. When they finally get Pazzo back on his feet, he says this one thing that just hits you. It's this incredibly bleak, powerful summary of what life is. And then for the final gut punch, he has absolutely no idea who they are. No memory of meeting them yesterday. None. And with that, he just stumbles off, leaving them standing there more confused than ever before. Okay, so Pazzo and Lucky are gone, and now it's time for the day's final ritual. Just like clockwork, a young boy shows up with a message. You know what's coming, right? This is the climax of this whole repetitive day. Vladimir is desperate at this point. He's practically pleading with the boy. You remember me, right? You were here yesterday. But the kid just denies it, flat out. Nope, never seen you before in my life. And for Vladimir, this is just maddening. It's the proof he didn't want. He really is trapped in a world that just hits the reset button every morning. And then here it comes, the message, the exact same one they got yesterday. The boy tells them, Mr. Godot will not come this evening, but surely tomorrow. And that promise, man, that promise is everything. It's the one little thread of hope that keeps them there. But it's also the very thing that's trapping them, you know? It's a promise that's also a prison sentence. And this is it. This is the moment of clarity, or maybe terror for Vladimir. He finally gets it. He sees the whole picture. He's not just waiting for some guy who's always a no-show. No, he's trapped in a cycle of repetition and forgetting. And the worst part, he seems to be the only one who's awake inside this nightmare. So faced with this complete futility, what do? They decide on the only escape plan that seems to make any sense. Suicide. They're going to hang themselves from that tree, the one that has leaves now. But of course, even this turns into a complete farce. What do they use for a rope? Estragon's belt. And when they give it a good tug to test it, it just snaps, and his pants fall down. It's this perfect moment of bleak, absurd comedy. I mean, they can't even manage to end their own suffering. All right, so the escape plan was a bust. Night's falling, the moon is up, the day's over. And that brings us to the final, absolutely iconic moments of the act. So they make a decision. It sounds clear, right? Final. Vladimir says, well, shall we go? And Estragon agrees. Yes, let's go. Sounds like they're finally gonna leave, finally gonna do something. But then you read the stage direction, and it explains everything. It's simple, it's stark, and it's absolutely devastating. They do not move. That huge gap between what they say they'll do and what they actually do, that's the prison they're in. They're completely paralyzed by the act of waiting itself. And that really leaves us with this one big question, doesn't it? The whole play seems to be about waiting, right? Waiting for something to happen, for someone to show up. But when you see this cycle play out, you have to wonder, if that promise of tomorrow is the very thing that's stopping you from moving today, are you actually waiting for something better? Or are you just trapped? All right, let's dive into something weird. A world that can be unsettling, surprisingly funny, and just deeply thought-provoking. We're talking about the strange and brilliant world of the theater of the absurd. You know that feeling when you're just waiting for something you're sure is going to happen? A text, a job offer, some kind of sign, but it just never shows up? Well, that exact feeling, that sense of pointless waiting, that is the absolute core, the beating heart of absurdist theater. And honestly, no play nails this feeling better than the one and only Samuel Beckett's masterpiece, Waiting for Godot. We're going to use it as our guide today because, wow, it just perfectly unpacks everything this bizarre and powerful movement is all about. Okay, so let's talk about that word absurd. It's so easy to just think it means silly or ridiculous, right? But nope, the real meaning goes way deeper, and you have to get it to understand what these plays are doing. And what's really fascinating is where the word even comes from. Absurd started as a musical term. It literally means out of harmony. Think of two notes clashing horribly. It's not just that something doesn't make sense, it's about this deep, fundamental conflict, a dissonance between two things that just don't fit together. And here's that clash, laid out perfectly. On one side, you've got us, humanity. We're just wired to search for meaning, right? We want patterns, we want a purpose, we want it all to mean something. And on the other side, the universe. And what's its response? Nothing. Just a cold, silent, chaotic void. That collision, our desperate search for answers and the universe's complete refusal to give any, that is the absurd. So if you're a playwright, how in the world do you put that feeling on a stage? Well, one of the first things you do is take aim at the one tool we think connects us. And you break it. We're talking about language. I mean, think about any normal play you've seen. People talk to get things done, right? They reveal secrets, they drive the plot, they have goals. But here, in the theater of the absurd, language is the opposite. It's not a bridge, it's a wall. It's just static. It's noise they make to drown out the terrifying silence. And this one line from Estragon in Waiting for Godot, it just says it all. They aren't talking to share big ideas or important news. No, they're talking just to hear themselves talk, to prove they still exist while they wait and wait and wait. And sometimes it goes even further than that. Language doesn't just fail, it completely disintegrates. There's this famous, incredible moment with a character named Lucky. He starts this long, rambling speech, and at first it sounds kind of academic, philosophy, science, but then it just completely unravels into pure, nonsensical gibberish. It's this staggering way of showing how all our big systems of thought, all our philosophies, have totally failed to give us any real answers. So if you've already broken language, what's next? Well, the next target in the absurdist playbook is the plot itself. Think about it. If life feels like you're just stuck on a hamster wheel, going nowhere, then the play should feel like that too. Yeah, so just throw out everything you know about a traditional story. Forget it. Absurdist theater completely rejects the whole idea of progress or a neat little ending. That whole beginning, middle, end thing, it's gone. Because the whole point is that nothing, ever, changes. Okay, so let's look at Waiting for Godot. Act 1, what happens? It's simple. You've got two guys, Vladimir and Estragon. They're standing by a tree, and they're waiting for a guy named Godot. That's it. So what about Act 2? What great plot developments do we get? Well, it's the exact same thing. The play ends in the exact same spot it began, still by the tree, still waiting. There's a really famous review of the play that just summed it up perfectly. The critic said it was a play where nothing happens twice. And that's it. That's the whole point. It's not about what's coming next. The story is the waiting. The non-event is the main event. And this feeling of being stuck, it's not just in their heads. The world itself seems to be against them. The physical objects, the environment, even time itself, it all becomes hostile. It's like the whole universe is an antagonist. Just look at Godot. The play literally opens with one of the characters just trying to take off his boot. And he can't. It's like the boot is fighting him. Another character keeps looking inside his hat, searching for some kind of answer. But there's nothing there. Even their own bodies are betraying them, decaying and failing. The world is just not on their side. And time, oh man, time is completely broken. It doesn't move forward in a straight line, it just loops. The characters are never sure what day it is, or if yesterday was real. And that creates this absolute nightmare feeling, right? That the suffering is infinite because there's no such thing as a tomorrow to escape to. Okay, so listening to all of this, you might be thinking, wow, this sounds incredibly depressing. But here's the wild part. These plays are often hilarious. And that brings us to this really important idea of tragicomedy. A lot of the humor is straight out of old school vaudeville or a Charlie Chaplin movie. Slapstick, silly arguments, people falling over, funny routines with hats. But it's not just for cheap laughs. This humor is a weapon. It's a survival tool. It's how the characters manage to get through the absolute horror of their existence. And for us, the audience, this is so powerful. Because at first, you're laughing. You're laughing at the silly jokes. But then, the laughter just sort of dies in your throat. you suddenly realize you're laughing at two souls trapped in this endless existential prison. And all at once, the comedy just makes the tragedy hit that much harder. It's deeply uncomfortable.
So, what's the takeaway from all this? Is it all just doom and gloom? Actually, no. And to really get the final point, we have to bring in a famous idea from the philosopher Albert Camus. Camus talks about the myth of Sisyphus, the guy who's cursed to push a huge rock up a hill for eternity, only for it to roll right back down every single time. It's a perfect parallel. Sisyphus has his rock and his hill. Our guys, Didi and Gogo, have their tree and their endless wait for Godot. It's the same thing, a pointless, repetitive, eternal task. But here's the mind-blowing part. Camus says we have to imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because by accepting his fate, by choosing to push that rock anyway, he finds a weird kind of freedom. He finds meaning in the struggle itself. That is the absurd hero. And that's what Vladimir and Estragon are. They could leave, but they don't. They come back the next day to wait again. Their win isn't Godot showing up. Their win is the act of showing up at all.
And that really leaves us with one last big idea. What the theater of the absurd seems to be saying is that the universe is never going to hand you a neat little package with the meaning of life written on it. Meaning isn't something you find. It's something you make. You build it every single day just by this simple, defiant act of carrying on. So it kind of makes you wonder, right? What are you waiting for? All right, imagine this. You're sitting in a theater. The curtain goes up, and you see two guys just standing by a tree on a lonely road. They wait. They chat about, well, nothing really. And then they just keep on waiting. That's it. That's the whole play. So why on earth would anyone watch this? And more importantly, why is it considered one of the most important plays ever written? Let's figure this out. This famous line from critic Vivian Mercure pretty much nails this central puzzle of Samuel Beckett's masterpiece, Waiting for Godot. It sounds like a punchline, right? But it's actually the key to unlocking this huge shift in art and thinking we call modernism. The fact that nothing happens, well, that's the most important thing that happens. So how do we decode a play about absolutely nothing? Well, we've got a roadmap. First, we'll look at why this kind of art even came to be. Then we'll see how it just shatters traditional stories, characters, and even language. We'll stare into the void at its center, and then we'll put all the pieces together to build a clear blueprint for what modernism is all about. Okay, to get why a play like Godot even exists, you have to get the world it was born into. The early 20th century was just a mess of trauma. You had world wars, insane new technology, and all the old certainties were just crumbling to dust. Artists looked around and felt like the old ways of telling stories just didn't cut it anymore. I mean, think about the books and plays from the 19th century. Everything was built on logic and order. They believed the world made sense, You had a clear beginning, a middle, and a nice, tidy ending wrapped up with a bow. Modernism took one look at the chaos of the real world and basically said, yeah, no, that's not how life works anymore. It was a total rebellion against neatness. So the very first thing modernism went after was the traditional story itself. And Waiting for Godot, oh man, it's a masterclass in demolition. It takes the rule book for how a plot is supposed to work and just rips it to shreds page by page. Just look at the difference here. A normal plot is a straight line, right? It moves forward, builds up to a big climax, and then you get a resolution. But Godot's plot? It's a circle. It's a loop. The characters end up exactly where they started, just waiting. There's no build-up, no big finale, and absolutely no answers at the end. And that's the genius of it, you see. The structure is the message. That circular story makes you feel the endless monotony. The total lack of action forces you to experience what it's like to just wait. And because we never find out who or what Godot is, we're denied that satisfying ending that we've been trained our whole lives to expect. Okay, so the plot is completely broken. What about the people in the story? Well, modernism was also totally obsessed with this idea that the solid, stable self was just an illusion. In a world that's falling apart, how could any person feel whole? So let's look at the characters and see how Beckett builds on this. Let's take our main guys, Vladimir and Estragon. They're not really two separate, complete people. It's more like they're two halves of one broken consciousness. Didi is the mind. He's always thinking, questioning, worrying about time.
And Gogo, he's the body. All he can focus on is his aching feet, his hunger, his physical pain. They can't live without each other, but even together, they're not whole.
And this feeling of being broken is driven home by their awful memory. Estragon can't even remember what they did yesterday. This isn't just some funny character quirk, it's a huge modernist statement. I mean, think about it. If you can't rely on your own memory, what is your identity even built on? You're just a bunch of random moments with no story connecting them.
So we've got a broken plot and broken people. You can probably guess what's next on the shopping block. Broken language. Modernists were super skeptical that words could ever really capture reality or even truly connect us to each other. They saw language itself as this busted, faulty tool. Beckett uses this really cool technique called stichomethea to show this. It's like this ping-pong dialogue, just quick, short lines firing back and forth. But in Godot, these little chats don't reveal anything or move the plot forward. They're just noise. They're a way for the characters to prove to themselves that they exist and to fill that terrifying silence. But the most brutal, devastating attack on language comes in one single, unforgettable monologue. I'm talking, of course, about Lucky's speech. It is the absolute peak of communication completely falling apart in this play. When they tell Lucky to think, he just explodes with what starts out as this parody of a stuffy academic lecture. He's using all these big words from theology, science, philosophy, all the systems we humans created to find answers. But then it just completely self-destructs, dissolving into pure chaotic gibberish. It's Beckett basically screaming that even our smartest language has failed to give us any real meaning. And this brings us right to the heart of the play, and really to the heart of modernism itself. A broken story, broken people, broken language, it all points to one thing, a massive crisis of meaning. The play is set in this spiritual desert, a world where the old answers, like God, just don't seem to be showing up for work anymore. So who are they waiting for? Godot. The name itself is a pretty big hint. A lot of people see it as a play on the word God. Didi and Gogo are just waiting for some higher power to show up, give them instructions, and tell them what their lives are for. But the one thing you need to know about Godot is that he never comes. They're waiting for a salvation that's always just out of reach.
In this void, even time gets all twisted and weird. Check this out. Objectively, a tree sprouts leaves between Act 1 and Act 2. That suggests a whole season might have gone by. But subjectively, to the characters, it feels like it was yesterday. Their internal experience of time, stuck, looping, and totally monotonous, is way more real to them than what a clock or a calendar might say. And this forces all of us to face the central question of the play, and maybe the central question of modern life. If Godot isn't coming, if there's no big cosmic plan or external source of meaning, what are we supposed to do all day? The play gives us a pretty bleak but really powerful answer. We invent little routines, we play games, we talk nonsense, we fiddle with our boots, we create habits, not really to live, but just to pass the time, to distract ourselves from the terrifying thought that maybe this is all there is. Okay, we have taken apart the plot, the characters, the language, and the philosophy. Now let's put it all back together. This is the big aha moment, where we can lay it all out side by side and see exactly what modernism was fighting against and what it built instead. This table makes everything crystal clear. Traditional realism, it gives you a straight, linear plot. Modernism, it gives you a circle. Realism has a specific time and place. Modernism has a vague country road. Characters go from being these deep psychological studies to fragmented archetypes. Dialogue isn't about sharing information anymore, it's about the failure to communicate. And the themes, they shift from things like social issues to the huge, terrifying questions about existence itself. So in the end, modernism wasn't just about being weird or different for the sake of it. It was a really honest attempt to make art that actually reflected what it felt like to live in a world that no longer seemed stable or whole or meaningful. It was a new lens for seeing a new, confusing reality. One of the characters says this, and it just captures the spirit of the whole thing perfectly. In a world that seems to have lost its mind, maybe the only sane thing to do is to embrace a bit of that madness, to make art that shows the absurdity of it all instead of pretending it's not there. And that really leaves us with one final thought. Waiting for Godot was written more than 70 years ago, but maybe it's more relevant now than ever. In our own world, a world of endless scrolling, constant notifications, and a million tiny distractions, are we really any different from Didi and Gogo? Are we all just inventing our own little habits to kill time, waiting for something or someone to show up and finally tell us what we're supposed to be doing?